Hello world, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Once again brought to you by Three Moon, the creators of delicious soy candles, macrame wall hangers, and they have a range of books. You'll need to check them out. That's Three Moons, numeral 3, Moons, spelt Moons. You'll find them on Facebook, Instagram, and they also have a Shopify store. On today's episode of the podcast, I talked to Zoe Thomas. She's a kinesiologist, and I asked her what a kinesiologist does and how they do it. She's also studying in psychology, so there's a little dabbling in that, mainly about the kids, and a little bit about social media. I hope you enjoy it.
So, my name's Zoe. I have a business, a kinesiology business, Pure Kinesiology, also known as Life Kinesiology. I've been a kinesiologist now for 7.5 years, and then studied it 3 years prior to that. I also study psychology, so I'm in my third year of psych, and I am an intuitive. So basically I feel what other people feel, and I incorporate all those three things into a session with a client, main base around people's emotions and their life experiences that contribute to why they're feeling the way that they're feeling today. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
So I've been seeing Zoe for many years now.
Mm-hmm.
How would you explain to someone who has no idea about kinesiology what kinesiology is?
Absolutely. So when I talk about kinesiology, basically we're looking at what is happening on a subconscious level of the body. So we're all walking around with an awareness of how we're feeling on a conscious level. But as a kinesiologist, I really look at what's happening underneath that and what's happening on a subconscious level. So I do that through muscle testing. So if a muscle is holding potentially really strong, we're looking at, no, you know what, there's no stress in the body around whatever we're talking about, versus when the body can't hold its energy or hold its strength, then we know we're on the right track and there's stress in the body around that. So as a kinesiologist, basically I call people's bullshit. So somebody will come in and they'll be like, I feel really good, my relationship's fantastic, but I'm really stressed about my kids. And so we'll have a session where they might think it'll be about their kids, but actually we're calling bullshit on other behaviours that are making them feel that way.
I'm very guilty of that one. I was like, my life is great. And you're like, well.
and everybody has it. So some people will come in and they'll be like, I just want to be really balanced, or I just, their end goal is that. But what actually is that? Where, like, I'm a 30-year-old who has a whole lot of story behind me that contributes every day to decisions I make, how I feel, how I interact with people. And so as a kinesiologist, basically what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to not only call their bullshit, but give you insight. So an example just on the weekend, and it was a conversation I had with my sister-in-law actually, where she called my bullshit, was I have this thing where I can't just clean out my kitchen pantry. I'll have to then go and clean out every drawer in the house. And it happens probably every 6 months. Whereas a lot of people can just clean out their pantry and be done with it. And so as a kinesiologist, it would be my job to establish, well, why do I have that pattern? Who taught me that that was the right way to do things? Because it doesn't serve me any purpose, because it's an absolute nightmare. But yet I've been doing it for years. I can't stop. So there is potentially something sitting on my subconscious that is making me do that and think it's okay every time I'm doing it, even though I know it's a stupid thing to do.
OCD.
Yes. but I'm not OCD. It's just
that one thing.
It's just that one thing. I cannot just clean out a knife and like a knife drawer. I have to do the whole house to feel like I've done that knife drawer. And it happens every 6 months. So kinesiologist, if I was in a session, we would basically be calling my bullshit and want to know, well, did that come from my mother, my father, a teacher? Where have I established that? Because once I have insight, or anybody has insight, then you can create change. But if you don't know why you're doing something, you just keep doing it.
Yeah.
It was Dad with his garage.
Yeah.
I reckon that's where it came from.
Well, Dad was OCD.
Was he?
Completely OCD. So...
Not a bad guess.
Not a bad guess. You've done well. You're an intuitive. And so, yeah, more than likely that's where this has come. But so as a kinesiologist, basically we help people establish what's going on, why it's going on, and how it's affecting them. so that everybody can reach, you know, as everybody wants to, the best version of themselves. And as a society, that's something that we just have to work on constantly. No one's ever really there.
Yeah, for sure.
So I want to bring up, sorry, babe, were you going to say something?
No, you're right.
An experience that we had, which led us to come to you. So Jai was experiencing headaches quite bad and for such a very long time. And we thought, well, Jai thought for sure that something was actually going on. He had all the scans done, all the testing, blood work, all that sort of stuff. Results were clear. There was nothing visibly wrong. And the GP we saw, her next cause of action was to put Jai on antidepressants, which she then
Straight
said,
away.
you cannot, you don't just stop these. So this will be a long term to fix your headache.
Yep.
Now, if anyone's been on antidepressants, you know what the side effects are. Jai's actually been on antidepressants before, so he knows what the side effects
fucking
were.
awful.
Yeah.
He hated it.
Yeah.
And it just, that response to me was just like, no.
Yeah.
That's not going to be our next call of action.
No. And that's something that we see really regularly too. And I just want to make it really clear for anybody that is listening, there is a time and a place for everything. So for some people, the cause of action, you know, if you were suffering anxiety and that type of thing, there's room in this world for modern medicine.
Oh, 100%.
But there's also room for other types of things. And so people like Jai, who's experiencing something like that, and their instinct, or they're like, no, you know what, this isn't right for me. I guess we just need to know that there's other options.
Yeah.
That we can go and, you know, do a heap of self-work and move stress that's sitting internally, you know, even from childhood dramas or current stresses and that type of thing. So the first protocol won't always be for everyone an antidepressant. But the thing is, we do hand a lot of power over to people like our doctors and that type of thing.
Because they're meant to know.
We expect them to know, yeah? And we give them that power. I think it's really cool, Bart, that, you know, particularly our sort of generation is moving into a place where we're not so willing to hand over our power.
Yeah.
You know, we're thinking about things a little bit more. We're researching, whereas like our parents' generation, whatever the doctor kind of says, goes. Whereas
that's really all they had. Like, what else did they do? Go to the library and pick up an encyclopedia?
Yeah, absolutely. And like even, you know, chiropractor, like that wasn't a common place for people to go. Similar sort of situation. I'm just very, very lucky that I have a mum that kind of knew better. So when I was about 7 years old, we did a trip around Australia, and we went to Uluru, and because we probably just didn't know any better, we climbed it. And I didn't get very far before I had a complete mental breakdown. I was only 7 and I wanted to jump off the rock. It took Mum about an hour to slide me down. We got down. I couldn't remember anything. We went for a walk around the rock, and then we went back home, went back to school, and just did our normal thing. But what happened when we got home is I could no longer learn. So everything that I had learnt was starting to disappear. Every night at the dinner table, Mum would have to teach me to reuse a knife and fork. You know, they'd be talking about repeating me. They were trying to look for a diagnosis. We were in contact with doctors and everything to try and work out what was wrong with me. But Mum was reading an article one day in the paper, and it was talking about a kinesiologist, and she thought, you know what, fuck it, let's give it a go. And so at 7, she took me to a kinesiologist, and I basically just cried and cried and cried during my sessions. I think I probably did like 5 to 10. I can't quite remember. And they determined that the stress was, like my body was still in stress from climbing Uluru. Wow. And because my body was still in stress, even though I wasn't showing any emotional signs, like I was still going to school, I was still happy, I still wanted to do my normal thing, but physically I was starting to break down. I was wearing like straps around my wrist just to hold a pencil. And so today, if you looked at that, like I probably, if I just went to a doctor, they would definitely be looking to diagnose me with some form of learning disability. But this kinesiologist was able to establish how much stress my body was under and release it, which meant that I didn't need to repeat that year. I could continue learning. I got rid of the straps. I didn't have to learn how to hold my knife and fork every night, and eventually went on and did uni and was more than capable of doing these things. But had we have not released that emotional stress, like who knows where I would be today, which is really, really scary. So there's a time and a place for modern medicine, and there's a time and a place where we have to explore what emotionally is happening to the body, because it affects 3 main areas. So when the body's under like severe emotional stress, it will start to affect us emotionally, then it affects us physically, and then it affects us chemically. So the chemical components is often where like the depression, like we show signs of depression and anxiety and that type of thing, because chemically the stress we're under is starting to change our body. So yeah, I totally get the story about an antidepressant. It's something I often see, and there is a time and a place for it, but there's also a time 100%. And a place to go, you know what? I need fucking insight. Yeah. I actually need to know, why am I getting these headaches? What has actually changed in my life to cause this?
Yes.
So, yeah, when I went to the doctor and we went through all the tests and whatnot, so that part was good. They wanted to find out why.
Yeah.
But as soon as they couldn't see it on a scan, like I'd done the CT scan and all the rest of it, as soon as I couldn't see it on that, it was just straight to the antidepressant.
Yeah.
And yeah, like when I came and seen you straight up asked me what my diet was like.
Yeah.
And I slightly tweaked my diet, and my headaches are gone.
Yeah.
There wasn't a single, not a question about my diet when I went and seen my regular GP.
Yeah.
But after finding out that GPs in Australia don't do much nutritional work at all, it doesn't really surprise me.
No.
I know you've talked about emotional stresses a lot, but I don't know, it seems like even if people are handling everything emotionally, they can still eat like shit and still feel like shit. Things go wrong. And it's not always, it just seems like depression and anxiety is a trending word, the trending diagnosis at the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't want to rule it out at all, because I know it exists. It's a real thing. And people do actually need antidepressants and whatnot to fix themselves at that stage. But it's not, I don't believe that it's a long-term solution.
Well, and I think even if you are at a point in your life where, you know what, shit happens and you really do need an antidepressant to help you get up in the morning and go, I don't think that you should just stop there. I think that you need to explore, okay, let's look at this from a holistic perspective. You know, not a hippie perspective, just a holistic perspective. And what the fuck's going on? Like, what is my diet like? Who do I need to go and speak to? And actually using that period in your life where you are on the antidepressant, all that, to gain more insight. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people who, and I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people who are, you know, under a lot of stress or depressed or feeling really anxious have lost the ability to hold power in their life. And so if somebody's listening to this, if anything, and they are feeling like they've lost their power and they're on an antidepressant, make a decision to get up tomorrow and to go and try and explore other areas, whether it's through a kinesiologist, a chiropractor, a dietitian, a naturopath. Exercise, you know, journaling, anything. Like even incorporating like these beautiful candles. We've got a beautiful candle here in front of me.
3 moons.
3 moons. Thanks, 3 moons. Even incorporating something like that into your house, like bringing in a plant, bringing in life, anything like that that actually changes your environment is going to assist you in your healing process, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
So one of the things that I hear a lot, because I'm a big crystal person, is the debate whether they work or not. And I love to tell everyone how much I believe in the placebo effect.
Yeah.
If it works for you, it's working for you.
Agree.
You don't need to see mystical powers coming out of a crystal. If it makes you feel good and you feel relaxed being around that, then isn't that doing its job? Like, isn't that working?
Absolutely.
Like, I just always hate the debate of, oh, that's not real, that's not. But if it's doing good for you, then it is good.
Yeah, I agree. We have a 6-year-old who's in prep, and every single day she picks a crystal and she takes it to school in her pocket. Now, she goes to a Catholic school. It's not something that we like promote, or she gets out and plays with it at lunchtime or anything like that. But for her, it's about the fact that it symbolises her home, her mum, our interests, and it's a connection for her. As soon as we started putting that crystal in her pocket to go to school, all of a sudden we completely stopped having morning drop-off dramas. We did nothing else except this crystal. The other thing, my big belief system with crystals or anything everything holds an energy. If you pick up your water bottle right now, that holds energy. You pick up your phone, it's got another type of energy. The thing with crystals, minerals, rocks, stones and all that is they come from the earth. Yeah, there's no more powerful grounding symbol than something that has actually come out of the dirt. So for those people that are like, oh, it's all hippie, mumble, voodoo sort of stuff, maybe you actually seriously need to consider how grounded you are. And it's not about opening your mind or anything like that, but, these sorts of things actually work because they connect us to the earth's energy, which is where we are the most grounded, calm, peaceful version of ourselves. So by putting a crystal necessarily in your home, but still doing exactly what you've always done, you're probably not going to feel better. But if you can actually connect with, well, why do I want that crystal around me? Or why do I need to bring that life into my home? And actually start to really look at things, not just look at things as a symbol, but start to look at your whole life and where it's at and what that crystal represents. And every time you hold that crystal, don't just hold it, like actually think, what does this feel like? How sharp is it? How smooth is it? What kind of feeling do I get through my body? That's learning the ability to ground yourself, to slow down. We live in a society where people think busy is good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, busy keeps you important. It gives you power. And so those people that are using crystals or that type of thing, they're not using it because they're an idiot. They're actually the opposite. They're probably more grounded, more centered than the person that's going, they don't work. Yeah. Yeah.
It's the intent behind it.
It absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's the intent behind anything.
Yeah.
Even the intent behind like washing up or doing your washing. Everybody is doing these things at such a rushed pace.
Okay, example of that was me yesterday. I have quite a few custom orders to complete, and I woke up and it's like I'm just like, I have to do this custom order today. I just have to do it.
Yeah.
And I walked up to Jai. I was like, no, I get to do it because people enjoy my business.
Yeah.
They like to buy from me, and that's why I get to do this. And I was like, change that.
Absolutely.
Like, otherwise, it's going to be something I hate doing. Soon enough, if I keep saying I have to do this and I don't want to.
And the other really cool thing about that is when you have an intention and you're making a candle or something like that, you're putting that intention into your product. Mm-hmm. So then when that product ends up in a person's home and that has been made with, I've made this candle for you because you want it, because you deserve it. Every time they light that, that is going to project in that space.
100%.
Yeah.
So just a little bit off track.
Totally, let's go
So
there.
Kinesiology is about the muscles. Mm-hmm. Do you do just physical as well? No?
No. So as a kinesiologist, I work on the physical side of the body, but I am not so much pain-based based on injury. If somebody comes to me because they're like, I've got this pain and it's an injury, I will often say to them, look, I work intuitively and emotionally. So if that pain is associated with some type of muscle memory, I'm your girl. If it's not, I have another kinesiologist that I refer to. But I have a big belief that every time we move our body and we're thinking something, or every time we injure ourselves and we're thinking, oh, I'm not good enough, like I'm so shit at football and I've just hurt myself at football, that memory, that thought actually attaches into a muscle. And so if I can get people to think about where they're at and why they're at, that's how I remove pain from the body. Yeah,
so that actually makes a lot of sense with people that complain about their dicky knee from football. Every time it rains, it hurts.
Yeah,
it's probably a muscle memory, right?
Absolutely. Definitely it could be. So the day that you thought that you were shit at football, was it raining?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then every time it rains, that is what is triggered.
Yeah.
And so that's potentially the pain behind the knee. So, if we have a memory that's happened on a really overcast day, every time it's overcast, it's probably going to put us back in that memory until we actually address it and deal with it.
Is that the same for smell? Because every now and then, it's usually around springtime, so I'm guessing it's about when flowers start to bloom. Mm-hmm. There's this one smell, I don't know what it is. I think it's jasmine flowers.
Yeah.
and it always sends me like I feel like I'm in primary school.
Yep, totally.
Is that like the same like
that's the
muscle
same
memory
thing.
type
That is
situation?
exactly what we're talking about. That's
so interesting.
even with your candles. So if somebody is going through something and they light a candle every time that they're journaling, for example, even when that candle is burning and they're not journaling, their body is going to send them into the same state it was in when they were journaling and releasing and that type of thing.
So cool.
And yeah, absolutely. So
how does you said you were studying psychology. Mm-hmm. Does it conflict with kinesiology at all?
No.
No?
I definitely will never be able to practice psychology and kinesiology in the same session, in the same room, because as a psychologist, you can't touch your clients. For me, at the moment, it's insight. What I was starting to see about 3 years ago was massive states of depression of people, and particularly children. And unfortunately, what I was really experiencing at that time, and also domestic violence, and these people were coming to me, and then the husband or the father, and this is nothing against men at all, were coming. And I just felt like they didn't believe what I was saying. It was like, she doesn't have a doctor hat on, or and so that they were actually ignoring me, and then I wouldn't see them for a long time, and then the mother would eventually bring them back. And so for me, the psychology was triggered then. I was like, you know what? I've got to get something else, because I want these men, I want these people to really believe what I'm saying, because it's important and it matters. And if I have to go and do another course to get that, I was completely willing at the time to do it. Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't conflict. A lot of what we see in kinesiology, does align with certain values of psychology, but they are completely different in the same sentence.
I remember you saying once that people can block you. Mm-hmm. Did you find that that's what they were doing?
Absolutely. Yeah, and, people don't like to admit that at times they've fucked up.
And sorry, Jay, especially men.
Yeah.
I find because my dad, for example, Mr. No emotion, and every now and then he will just break down.
Yeah.
But he's
that's the society that
that's what I mean. Because I could not imagine him going to see someone like you.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't imagine him
and
going to
be
see
willing to speak, because he does it. He just doesn't. There's no
No.
He's a great guy. There's just I hugged him once when his sister passed away. That's about as emotional as we get.
Yeah, I think that when you come and I give parents so much credit when they come and see me, particularly for their children, because it is really hard to know that you've potentially triggered something. And as parents, we do it every day with our kids. That's why we're going to kinesiologists or psychologists, because our parents have more than likely done something that's triggered us. We can't help it.
Yeah.
But when somebody blocks you or isn't willing to make the change or that type of thing, then I actually say to them, I don't need to see the child. I actually need to see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very upfront and honest with parents. Mothers, fathers, I don't care. I'm there for the child. And as a kinesiologist, I can give the child a voice, because I can talk to them about where their body is showing stress and what emotion that means and all the rest of it. But I'm more than happy to tell the parent, you know what, this is about you. It's not about the child, so stop wasting your time. Because kids don't have that voice.
Yeah.
Have you noticed a lot of people, or more so people, coming in with a lack of resilience, so to speak? Like they can't cope with general day-to-day workplace bullshit, or even so our kid's going to school at the moment, and our eldest he complains about bullying, and you ask him about this bullying, and it doesn't seem like bullying at all. It seems like, because he's talking about his friends, they're playing soccer, and like yesterday, he was it yesterday? Anyways, he fell over and he hurt his arm. Asked him about it. He said it was bullying to start with, and then you really ask him. They were playing soccer. He had the ball. One of his friends came up, tried to get the ball off him, and he's fallen over.
Yeah, look, definitely, it's something that I see. I think we're in a really difficult time at the moment where we're trying to change the way that we parent our children, yet there's elements of society that are still the same, and bullying's a absolute hot word in the school area and all the rest of it. There's a massive learning curve for us as parents around resilience and what that means, because we you know, there's so much around protecting your child and nurturing your child, so much more than when we were kids. You know, even my dad used to often say, like, kids can't even go outside now and get a prickle in their foot, like, because they're attached to a TV screen. And that was all part of the learning and that type of thing. And so I think that, you know, what we really have to go back to is remembering the importance of running under a sprinkler and then being cold, or, you know, and what learning happens there for a child. I often, when I'm dealing with children or that type of thing, I want to know what words mean to them. So if you know, somebody comes to me and says, I'm really stressed, I don't care if it's a child or an adult. Well, what does that word even mean to you? Bullying, what does that word even mean to you? Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird that you brought that up, because when we ask Jack what is bullying, it is everything.
Yeah.
It's like everything.
Yeah.
His friend can't have a joke with him. Not saying that he's a sensitive kid or anything like this. This is just, I don't know whether it's what they're teaching him or how the upbringing that we're giving him. I would like to think that it's not.
Yeah. See, this is the parent thing where sometimes we've got to admit our own bullshit.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's about education then too.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's look at bullying, and you can do this by getting a great big sheet of paper and doing like a mind map with them. Bullying, these are the things that probably need to sit in that category. So let's come up with other words for the jokes, or let's come up with other words for, you know, playing football or whatever the case is. But a lot of children, you know, even adults, they put everything into the same category. So it's like, I'm having a really shit day. Are you having a really shit day, or did you just have a really shit hour?
Or not even.
Yeah. Or did you get cut off and that threw your whole day, but the rest of the day was really good, but that's what you want to focus on? And that for me is about resilience, is insight and awareness. Yeah, so Jack might have had that one moment at school, but what else happened? Let's get their minds thinking about all the other things, because we like to, and you know, we have probably, our generation has probably really done this too. We like to focus on the one thing that puts us in victim mode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whereas, you know, what we need to really think about is all those other things that get us out of victim mode. Yeah. And that for me is resilience. That for me is insight. That for me is, you know, we can all have a shit day or a shit moment, but everything else is okay. So often with our eldest Aria, she is very good victim mode. And she'll be telling us a story, or, you know, and we will acknowledge it. But then I want to know, what was your best part of the day? To start to train their minds to go negative to positive, not suppressing. We were brought up in a very suppressing, you don't acknowledge your victim mode or how you're feeling. And so I feel it's really important for us as parents or just people to start to change that learning environment for our kids. So, okay, oh shit, Jack, that really sucks that, you know, you fell over or you got pushed over or whatever the case was. But what was great about playing soccer with your mates? You know, because I think that for a lot of people that's what's lacking, going from one state to another state.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's probably going to get harder because, like, I mean, you watch the news, you look at social media, and all the rest of it. I mean, social media is programmed to show you what is going to trigger you.
Yeah.
Like, because it's written in the algorithm that, you know, people respond and will comment and interact with other people when it's negative sort of bullshit.
Absolutely.
Rather than positive. And like mainstream media and whatnot has known that for ages, and that's why you see all the wars and whatever else from all around the world.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, it's hard to get past that, like such a cultural, I don't know, shitstorm.
Yeah, totally.
and then you got to fight it as a parent. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I completely agree with what you're saying though. Like that's a great start, really.
And I think too, you know, social media is such a complex topic,
Isn't it?
Because we need it. Like, as a business owner, that's where my business comes from, social media.
Yeah.
Yet I'm so conflicted because I fucking hate it at the same time. Like,
me too.
Why am I wasting my time even looking at other people's lives when yet, you know what, I haven't got my shit together. And I can't imagine what that's going to be like for our children. But we have to remember, you know, and if you're one of these parents, I'm not saying you two, but if you are, listen anyway. there are rules put out by the government of people that are actually trained in the area around what social media and all that should look like for our kids. The problem that we have is we actually have people completely ignoring that and giving their kids 5 hours of social media time, like YouTube time or whatever. And they're being influenced at a really, really young age by people that don't have the ability to influence. And so as a parent, as a friend, as anybody, I think that it's our job and our responsibility to make sure that's not happening for our child.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
and I get it. It's a great babysitter. Like, I can't deny that. I can get a whole lot of stuff done if my kids are watching YouTube, but it's really irresponsible from me at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. We notice a massive change in, I want to say mainly Jack's behaviour when he has been on YouTube. It's just,
After he's been on YouTube. Yeah, sure.
It's just like meltdown mode. No matter what you say, it's just like he doesn't want to do that. Like, we have to force him to go outside sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like you've said that the government's got guidelines or whatever you want to call them. But when the creators, like Facebook CEO, like Mark Zuckerberg and all of his top dudes, they don't let their kids on Facebook.
Isn't that amazing? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the creator of Twitter, he doesn't have kids, but his bunch of people, top guys, they don't let their kids on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, none of it.
Yeah, because it's not, and you know,
So they know they've had psychologists, psychiatrists, whoever to make it so addictive.
yeah, and even just TV. I know I had to do I can't quite remember the details of the study, but I had to evaluate a study last year with my degree, and you know, it was around even TV time and that type of thing. Our brains aren't developed enough as a child to take on what they're taking on. And the problem that we find at home with Aria is if she watches YouTube or something like that, she has a completely different mentality. Like, she has this want mentality.
Yeah.
You know, no, we need to do this, because they get this understanding of what somebody's life looks like that is completely like sponsored and out of control. And these parents are on these YouTube clips for like 10 minutes being the best parents and I'll play with you and let's do this and woo, woo, woo. And then your child then goes, well, if my life doesn't look like that, there's something wrong with what's happening here.
Yeah, sure.
And so we're really making it even harder for ourselves. But the problem is, in 10, 15 years' time, you know, one of the most common things that people say in the teenage years at the moment, what they want to be when they grow up, they want to be a fucking influencer.
Yeah.
Like... You know, because they've grown up on it. It looks like this magical world. Yet, you know, basically it's just completely giving this false, you know, reality of what the world's like. Like, we've got kids more interested in the Kardashians than, you know, politics and that type of thing that actually really matters.
Yeah.
But the Kardashians, for them, is their reality. That's life, not actually, you know, processes and things that the government are putting in. It's what the Kardashians are trying to sell to them. Yeah. And it's messy. Like, and it completely, like, as growing up as a teenager, like, I remember, like, my biggest influencer was, I don't even remember the name, like a Dolly magazine or something like that. One magazine that I could buy off the shelf. Yeah. You know, these kids have access to this 24 hours a day. And I think it's scary.
I think it's so scary. For me, the social media, I was talking about this with Jai this morning, when it comes to the comments, what people will say online, like, it scares me for our kids, because this is the way of the world. Like, this is what they will have to deal with when they get their own devices and all that sort of stuff. The fucking terrible things that people will say to each other.
Well, you look at Dolly. Yeah.
While you're anonymous.
That Dolly campaign, I don't know her details, who committed suicide.
Oh, yes,
But, you know, I think that's where it comes back to this insight and responsibility, like, which is where I try and base everything off, is once we've got insight, let's create change. Well, if there's enough of us out there, enough parents who have insight that, you know what, this is not okay, then let's create that change. Yeah. You know, let's not, because every other 13-year-old has a device and is allowed an Instagram account, no. Like, I was brought up where no meant no.
Yeah.
You know, and not all the time, but if it wasn't for our highest good, don't fucking do it. So why have we got all these parents out there that are doing it? We know it's not good enough. So maybe you need to go and get a fucking crystal and ground yourself and go, you know what? I don't need that extra 2 hours a day to work or clean my house. I actually need to connect with my child, because these devices are making them want to connect with people. And that is one massive thing that children miss out on in their homes, is connection.
So it's funny you brought up connection as well, because I had a podcast with Tiffany from
Yes.
from the base services here in town, and she said the biggest issue that she finds is that there's no connection.
Yeah.
It's not drugs. It's not domestic violence.
Next to each other, like
Yeah.
She and we talked briefly on social media as well, and she said, like, you know, social media exactly the same as us. It's great for
business,
certain things, horrible for other, and one of those things is connection. Like, while you can talk to anyone in the world, you're not talking to the person that's sitting next to you on the couch, your husband, your wife, your kids, or your best friend, or whatever, you know. And that's really sad. That's really sad.
And this is where we've got to get really good at calling our own bullshit. You know, why am I finding it so hard to connect with people? Why do I think it's so important for me to be busy and yet not sit at the dinner table with my kids at night and have a conversation, and start to seriously call our own bullshit? You know, is it because we feel like we're lacking power, so we need to work longer hours to feel more powerful? Do we need more money? Well, why do we need more money? What can change in our life? And actually seriously sit there and call your bullshit on why you're not connecting with people. Simple things like having rules around, you know, after 7 o'clock, the phone actually goes on the charger on the kitchen bench, or, you know, fucking 5 o'clock. A massive thing that I'm aware of is children are growing up with a phone in front of their parents' face. You know, and yet children...
Why can't I use it? You always are.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, kids learn to read our eyes and our facial expressions. Well, they're looking now at the back of a screen. So it might be okay for you right now, and you might get that extra 2 minutes, you know, or 2 hours a day to get done what you need to get done. But, I mean, we've really got to think about what effects that's going to have.
Yeah.
Which is basically everything. We're just dealing with a generation of children, and we're a generation of parents where it's just, you know, we've created a lot of this for ourselves.
Oh,
Yeah, sure.
100%.
And like you
100%.
said, it's a big loop, because they see these perfect families on YouTube for the 10 minutes that they're watching it, and then they expect that in their life if they're not on their phone.
Yeah,
that's what they expect.
And then from an emotional perspective, let's look at, okay, why don't I, as a child in their mind and how it works, why don't I have that? Am I not good enough?
Yeah.
So then we bring up all these other issues around we're not good enough. Then it's, I want other parents. So there's a disconnect there. So how do you get that connection back when your child's 13 and seriously needs you?
Yeah.
It's all too late.
Yeah.
But we have control over that.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like it takes one person to create a change. Like, and if everyone else at school, and I feel sorry for the parents, and I often see them in my clinic, like where their children are literally begging them for these devices, and they're the only kid in their grade that doesn't have a device.
Yeah, that's another thing, like with the cultural, social type situation that we've got. Like, if we take everything off our kids, they'll be the only kids without it at school.
Yeah.
So, is there like a parent-teacher interview that we can set up with everyone in the school and say, you know, this is fucked?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do become victims to, you know, that mentality of you've got to fit in, you know, but it's actually okay not to fit in, but we want our kids to fit in because we know how important that actually felt during those years. But, I mean, reality of it is when you're out of that environment, does it fucking matter? Like, if you don't fit in, I wish I knew this when I was 13. Like, it's actually okay. Like, I spent so much time trying to fit in that, you know, it affected like my interests or my studies or whatever the case is. Like, why is there such a strong mentality around fitting in? And that even happens in our adult world.
Great. The best leaders in the world don't fit in.
They don't fit in.
I will willingly admit that I probably still suffer trauma from high school of trying to fit in.
Yeah.
rejection scares the fuck out of me.
Yeah,
because I want people to like me.
Yeah.
So I always wanted my little group of friends to like me because some days they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Some days they would. I was like, God, it is
It's
fun.
mean, isn't it?
But like I changed everything I liked and everything I was to fit in.
And then how
And
long?
I'm still probably dealing with that now.
Exactly.
And I'm 31.
How long after it wasn't important to fit in did you have to go and re-find yourself? And we've got these women coming into my clinic space that are like, who am I?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden we have this moment in life where we wake up and we go, what? That is, I don't fucking care about that. But yet we've thought for so long that we do. Or marriage is breaking down because we've got these two people that no longer know who they are, you know? And I think it all comes back to start calling your fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Does that matter? Does that not matter? Why is it so important for me to have my house spotless? And why do I feel the need, you know, to buy my child that, you know, or to hang out with those mums or to, you know, have a business even though it's not for my highest good or whatever the case is? We have to, as people, get really, really good at calling bullshit.
So when I come to see you and you'll usually ask me a question, probably knowing full well that that's my trigger point, I often leave going, I knew that.
Because your subconscious talks to you all the time. We are just disconnected with it. And
is that like suppressing? Is that like, I know that that's a trigger for me, but I'm just not dealing with that today.
And that for me is my intuition. I am no more intuitive than anybody else out there, but I'm really good at listening to my subconscious. And so that even comes down to if I'm driving a car and I get the message turn left, I turn left. Even though I'm like, why wouldn't I go right?
Yeah.
You know, it's that constant tuning into yourself and going, yes, no, and listening to what your body is actually trying to tell you. And I get that all the time in a session, like where we'll have this whole session, they're like, I knew that. They just sometimes need somebody to give them permission that it's okay to listen.
Yes, right. Do you find that people will often, like once the trigger is brought up, that's usually all it takes?
No, not always.
Not always?
Because there's a reason why for some people that they have created to ignore that. And so for some people it can be quite complex. And now starting to, you know, if you always say yes to everybody and your trigger is I have no time or stop saying yes to everybody, that can be a really, really big deal to people. You know, and that can even stem back to like childhood trauma of if I couldn't say no to, this wasn't my case, but I couldn't say no to my dad without getting like absolutely beaten.
Yeah.
You know, so they're then living their adult life going, I can't say no to people, even though they haven't made that connection yet. So as a kinesiologist, we can test up ages and all the rest of it so that they get the insight and so that they can change the story they're consciously telling themselves. I can say no to you today as an adult and you're not going to beat me.
Yeah.
You know, and it's changing their stories through creating insight. Once you've got that knowledge, you know, you can create change, but for some people it's not as easy as going, oh, that's my stress.
Yeah.
You know, then you've got to deal with, well, let's talk about what happened when you were a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and let's start to remove that. I often look at people as onions. We are layers and layers and layers. The really cool thing about a kinesiologist is we can get to the core.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get to the core first instead of spending 20 sessions going through each layer. Let's just get to the core, and let's create change from there.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, everybody's situation is so different. So why people create things to protect themselves is different for everybody.
So you're like a psychedelic.
I know, right?
So I went to see you a few years ago and you asked me if we were trying to fall pregnant.
I did.
And I said, no, we're not having any more kids. That's gross.
No way.
And I remember you still, like, you had your little mist out to spray over me and you still chose the pregnancy mist. And I was like, oh, that's okay, random, but whatever. And I didn't know at the time, but I was pregnant. How did you know?
I feel what is going on in people's bodies because so when somebody comes into my clinic space, I literally can feel what is happening in their body. So if they've got a sore knee or if I can feel where their stress is. You know, pregnancy for me is a massive, I just get so dehydrated. And I have learnt to really work and develop that.
So is that your intuition side, or is that kinesiology, or is that a mix of both?
It's a mix of both, but definitely my intuitive side.
Yeah.
I've always been very aware that I was very intuitive, but I just didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't grow up in a family where, you know, mum was very open, which I'm very lucky, but I didn't grow up in a family where, you know, we talked about intuition or, you know, oh, I was always so psychic or whatever the case is. I later found out that my grandmother on my father's side was very intuitive and psychic, where she would actually even have people come over to the home and do readings, but they were really strong Catholics, so that just was behind closed door. And she passed away a long time before I was born, and my dad never spoke about it because he was so young when she passed away. But yeah, the pregnancy and that type of thing it's something that I've just developed, and I got really confident at asking the questions. So if I felt a pain in my knee when I was sitting near somebody, I got really confident saying, hey, does your left or right knee hurt? To begin with, that was really scary because, you know, fear of rejection or people thinking that I was fucking crazy. But for me, it was a confidence thing. And the more I did it, the more confident I got. And now I'm like, people are coming to you, just say it.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely knew you were pregnant.
I was like, no, gross. I'm not having 3 babies.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of bullshitters in your line of work?
Bullshitters?
Yes.
I'm
not talking about, you know, you talk about
Like the
calling
psychic
people.
version of
Yeah,
kinesiology.
yes.
Yeah, look, definitely there could be. Yeah, definitely. And, you know, for me, it really comes down to people's intention. I believe that there are a lot of people out there that practice different modalities that their intention's not pure. If it's based on making money or, you know, getting people to return and, you know, or getting people to buy a product or that type of thing, well, their intention's not pure. And that for me is the people that aren't doing any justice to anything that we're doing. But I also teach kinesiology. And one of the things that, you know, you were a student at one point, one of the things I really try and get people to understand is your intention has to be pure.
Yep.
So even your intention, when I teach people kinesiology, I do it with the intent that they can open up a clinic space next to me and I actually would be okay with that. So I think as long as we come from a heart space and that type of thing, and intention is everything, then that's positive. But if someone's intention's wrong, well, that to me is where they're doing a disservice to the industry, and there's definitely people out there whose intention is not pure.
Yeah.
But we have to get really good as people at seeing somebody once and going, you know what? You're not for me, don't fucking go back.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
or walking, you know, around like those psychic expos or that type of thing and looking at someone and connecting and going, you know what, you're not for me. And that to me is really about taking back your power and connecting with yourself and actually listening to what is good for you and what is bad for you. But yeah, definitely some bullshitters out there, I agree.
Yeah. Traveling circus.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any more questions.
I don't have any more questions.
Well, there you go.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
We did it.
But yeah, look, I also am very open. So on my Facebook page, Life Kinesiology, people often send me messages. And if they give me a bit of insight, this is where I was talking, this relates back to what we just said. If they say, this is my stress, can you help me? If I can't fucking help them, I want to refer to them to somebody who can help them, because at the end of the day, we all just have to try and reach the best version of ourselves. And if I can't do that, I want to give you the person who can. And whether it's me, whether it's saying, you know what, you got to go to a dietitian. You've actually got to go to a doctor and get a blood test. I'm very open and honest about that.
Yeah.
So that people actually can reach the best version of themselves. So if anyone has any questions following this podcast, don't hesitate. You're welcome to send me a message. And we can help start to guide you in the direction of, you know, achieving the best version of you.
Yeah, lovely. So they can find you on Facebook?
Yep, Life Kinesiology. They'll find me.
Lovely.
Instagram?
Look, not a big Instagrammer. I'm a big Instagram stalker. But I haven't really got a page, so that would be pointless for them.
Okay, cool. Lovely.
Okay, thanks for the chat, guys.
No worries. Thanks for
for coming.
coming.
No worries.
Thanks for listening, guys. And don't forget, keep it real.